Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
Kick-Ass Couples Podcast Recap. And we are excited to be with you here today with my beautiful bride. We're coming up on 27 years, guys. Being married together, can you believe it? In 4 or 5 more days. This woman next to me, I'm so excited about that. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about Eric Guerra and Mindi Abair. This is a recap of an episode of 2 incredible people. I say that I know about everybody we talk to, but I feel like it's true, don't you?
That's the best part of all of these interviews is that everyone we meet and everyone we have the opportunity and blessing to interview, we take something very special and unique from each of them. So it's such a fun opportunity.
And these two were really cool because this is the second marriage for both of them. So both of them were coming into this relationship having already been married. Mindi never had children, and she was an only child growing up. And Eric has 2 daughters. And so there's some great circumstances that a lot of you out there maybe have dealt with or are dealing with and trying to figure out how do you piece it together and how do you handle those obstacles as they arise. But I was so glad to have the opportunity with them. And if y'all haven't listened to the episode yet with Eric and Mindi Abair and Eric Guerra, there's so many good notes and so many great things that came out of that. Really like to encourage that you do it. So Kim, but this is all about takeaways. And tell me, I'll let you start today. Ladies first today. What was your first takeaway from this episode?
My first takeaway from the episode where we interviewed Mindi and Eric was that they both said they wrote down a master plan in the beginning, and they had sort of a roadmap that they both agreed to and came up with. So more like a plan of sorts. And I just thought that was a really great takeaway. And I feel like I want to break that down a little because I don't think enough people spend time in the very beginning while they're getting to know one another. They don't spend enough time really developing that roadmap or that plan or even discussing very important foundational things in a marriage. And I feel like it's really important that you talk about religion and maybe that's a foundation for one and not the other. I think it's really important to talk about if that person is a curious person, an eager person to learn and to know more, and maybe the other person isn't, because eventually some of those conflicts are going to arise and they're going to be challenges in the relationship. What if one wants kids and the other doesn't, and they never really spent a lot of time breaking that down and talking about those things? So I think a roadmap, a plan, just talking about what your visions look like for a future together.
Right. So when you say roadmap, you're not talking about all the things they're going to necessarily do, not tactically. I mean, obviously stuff like where you're going to live, how you want to live, what does home look like for you. I think it really is. Hopefully, some couples go through counseling with pastors if they're people of faith, or they do things to get them ready to be married. And I really think it's just starting out with an understanding and an expectation, right, about some of those life issues and things that you're going to approach. And I think a great way maybe to back up and talk about that is like, what does success look like? What do you think success looks like in a relationship? What do I? And are we on the same page and able to meld that together successfully?
Sure. Do we have the same outlook on life? Do we have the same vision of life?
Yeah, and planning together, you're not going to, we make plans and God laughs, right? I think that's a quote that people say. You can't lay it all out and follow the rules, and it's, life gets in the way and stuff just happens. But being intentional and having that conversation and talking about it, I agree, is critical. And I think they both came into this like, hey, been married once. This is number 2. And we don't want to end up where we were before. But imagine if you're getting into your first marriage and you have that conversation the first time, you're gonna avoid a lot of things and get some understanding, right? Because we talked about all the time, 69% of all issues in a relationship are not solvable. So what do you do with them? You got to find that understanding, and starting in advance is just using proactivity, right? Using that proactive muscle in your marriage. And I think that along those lines, one of the things that Eric said, they both said this kind of in their own ways. Mindi is a performer. She's an artist, and that's a very different life. And she knew nothing different than that because she grew up with her dad. He was a rock star and a performer and on the road. So she just said, hey, this is just how life goes, right? So she was used to it. But Eric did not know that world until he met her and started experiencing it. And what I loved what he said is he loves her life and is happy with her success. Like, he doesn't mind being second not in the passenger seat. He says, you know what? I carry her saxophone case for her. And he goes, one of the little pearls he threw out, I even put notes in there when she opens it up and she's ready to play. She gets a little love note from me. And I thought that was great. But he said he loves being in her world and being second and supporting her as being number 1. And she said the exact same thing about him. He's in the wine business, and they figure out a way to pull that together, and you can learn more about that in the full episode. But she said, I didn't know anything about wine, and here we are with these great vintners and these producers, and people are saying it tastes and looks and smells like this. And she said, I had just to be quiet and listen, right? So she's happy being second fiddle in his world and supporting him. And I thought that was a great example of understanding what they were getting into and how they could best support each other's success.
I agree.
When it comes to creating a kick-ass marriage, do you ever wonder what you could be doing better? Have you ever thought how helpful it would be to be a part of a like-minded community of other imperfect couples who want to level up in their number 1 relationship? Come visit Kickass Couples Nation, where you can talk with people just like you who are looking for ways to invest in and increase their joy, commitment, and fulfillment in their most important human relationship. You'll have access to a team of licensed marriage therapists, coaches, articles, podcasts, live webinars, and more. Just visit MatthewPHoffman.com so you can learn more about a community that's ready to help you level up. That's MatthewPHoffman.com so you can become of the growing Kickass Couples Nation right now.
How about you? Tell me what one of your first takeaways was from this interview with them.
Sure. Well, I think that Eric brought a good point up. He said he thinks that he is in full control and of responsibility of what he decides to do and not do. And he said he thought it was really important that not only he, but that Mindi, his partner, his spouse, be willing to be students of greatness. He's like, gosh, a lot of the stuff that I do or we do in our relationship is not original from me. But he goes, I look at people that are successful or that I admire, and I say, and I study, how did they do it, right? And what can I take from that? And he goes, I'm a student, and I can choose to pursue, follow, and study what I want to, and so can Mindi. But he had a quote, I think he said, you take from all the books you read. Not just the first one. And that's what Eric said. And in other words, he learned a lot from his first relationship that he brought to this one. And he learns from a lot of couples and people that he meets or podcasts or books and things that he's going to use in his own relationship. So he's very open and willing to accept influence from a lot of people when he finds that truth. And I really loved that about him. He said, like, Mindy's business is very different than his. His wine business is built on loyalty, but hers is built on relationships, trust, and consistency. So she brought that belief. He brought that belief of being a student, and they were able to kind of take those two different backgrounds and really form success together. And that was one of the things, my big takeaways that I was impressed with.
I love that. I think his curiosity for continuing to learn and to continuing to grow after being in a relationship that perhaps the first time wasn't successful really helped to turn things around for him to say, how can I do this better? Can I learn from people that are doing it well? And that's really the whole crux and reason why we're doing this podcast, right? We want to share with our listeners how other people do it, how they're successful, what are their motives, and what are they doing? What's the secret sauce, as you always say? And so I really feel like the continual learning and always trying to be curious is such an important thing.
Yeah, you have to be a student. And I remember, one of the things that the background that I came from used to make fun of me when we first got married. You say, oh, how come you have all those self-help books on your shelf? Haven't you found yourself yet? Don't you know what you want in life? And I think it took you a while to understand that I'm always searching because I'm always a student, but I know I don't know a lot. And you take a little bit from every book, every podcast, every relationship, and if it works and you get that idea, you might put it in your own toolkit. And I think that you and I are on that same page now, and we both do that in our own way about working on ourselves and pulling greatness out of other people and other experiences.
I really think it's important not to see it as a sign of weakness, because that's the way I looked at it. I thought, why are you always, looking at these self-help books, and why are you always reading these things, and why don't you have enough confidence in yourself? But it's really not about that at all. And I felt like the more I learned and discovered that it was such a great means of information, of really trying to advance myself and to be a better person, that it was just a great way to do that by reading books, listening to podcasts, and now I can't get enough of it. So
you're a great student.
I'm a junkie. Yes.
That's okay. It's a good thing to be a junkie on. I mean, you can waste your time, and we're in the car a lot, and I've listened to so many books on tape. Yeah. I mean, hundreds of books on tape as I've been traveling, and that's at your classroom on the highway, right?
Absolutely.
And so what about you? What was another takeaway, Kim, that you had with Mindi and Eric?
So one of the things that I thought about and resonated with was they talked a lot about good communication. They talked about trust and honesty, and the fact that they didn't really have a lot of conflict in their relationship. And that says a lot about a couple where one of them is a musician who is constantly on the road and has a very different lifestyle than the other. And so when there's a lot of trust and honesty, and when conflict as it arises is dealt with immediately, they just really, they make it feel like it's seamless, that their relationship is able to sustain anything that comes their way, regardless of the circumstances and how they are living their lives. So I feel like, for me, good communication, always being open, always being honest, really being vulnerable is an important aspect of this relationship. And the reason why I say that is because she was not used to being vulnerable, in that musicians, that's just not how they are. That's just not how they roll. They're pretty to themselves. They don't open up, and vulnerability does not lend itself to being a musician or in the music world, I believe.
When it comes to creating a kick-ass marriage, do you ever wonder how you're doing? We found that there are 13 key components that make up a thriving relationship, which is why we've created the Kickass Assessment. In this powerful free tool, you'll learn what they are and how you and your spouse are ranking in each one. And you'll get recommendations that will help you start improving today. To get your results, simply visit MatthewPHoffman.com. Again, that's MatthewPHoffman.com. It's time to start kicking ass. Let's go. So what do you think it was, Kim, or what do you think it is in their relationship that gave them that? Like when you think of resiliency in a relationship, what is it that builds that resilience? Like how do you get it? What did you? Can you think of anything that they did or anybody else that we've interviewed? Like what is it? What can someone do to build resiliency or strength so that when those conflicts or those challenges do come, right, it's not tearing it apart or breaking it down? Like what do you think that is? What was for them, or what would you say it is for some of the other couples we've talked about? Because I think that idea that you talked about resiliency is huge, right? That's strength of the relationship.
Well, I believe that when there are two things. First of all, when there is conflict, meeting it just head on right in the moment is really important, because if you don't, and you're the type of person that just lets it continue to build and build and build, then you are really going to run into a wall eventually. And I feel like if you're able to just in that moment say, hey, what you said to me, or that little comment that you made, or that didn't make me feel very good, that hurt my feelings. And so I think that first of all, being able to handle it right away is really important in a relationship. And in this case, also, they not only hit it right when it happens. I feel like they also do a very good job of really having that trust and honesty with each other, right up front. And they were able to build that right from the beginning.
Sure. I would agree with that. And I think that one of the things that I loved about them as well is that they said they both made decisions that pulled each other out of their comfort zones. And they liked that about each other. So Eric said he did things that pulled her out of her little box that she was used to being in and made her get comfortable in new situations. And she did the same thing for him. So they were really making each other stretch and grow and thrive in ways and places that they hadn't done before. And I think that really added to that, some of that resiliency, because it built their trust, right? It built their honesty with each other and their communication. And I loved seeing them share and talk about that. I think, Mindi said, communication is everything, and she said, or Eric said about her style, she's a butterfly. She's happy. She lands here and everything's good here. She takes off, she lands somewhere else, and life's good there too. She never met a person she didn't like, never in a situation where she couldn't just prosper.
Wow.
And he said, man, that is not me.
Well, and he had to reel her in a lot of cases and just say, hey, we have to focus on this right now. We have this XYZ coming up with the girls, and we really need to make sure that we're present for that. And we have this sense of family. And what I loved about them is that they were very open to accepting influence. And that, I believe, has been a big help and force in their relationship.
So I think that I wanted to play off this when you said it earlier, because in our interview we said, well, what pillars are most important? And she said, communication. She goes, being the artist, she goes, Billy Joel nailed it. Honesty. She said honesty. She goes, honesty, trustworthiness. Billy Joel wrote the song all about it. She said, because if you have that honesty, you can take anything else on in personal life and business life, because not brutally honest, right? Not being mean and vindictive honest, but honesty, lovingly, tenderly,
right,
communicating what your spouse needs to hear in an honest way. And some of our other guests have said this too, when you sugarcoat something, so much. I think it was Jessica Jennings in a previous episode. She said, when you sugarcoat it and dance around the topic so much, you really are not giving them the import they need to hear. So being lovingly honest, not brutally honest, right? Because you don't want to be brutal to your spouse or your partner, but saying it with love and care. And sometimes even when we do that, it's not received well. I know sometimes when I try to put that velvet glove on and share things with you, they still don't come across the way I intend them to. And I'm still learning how to do that in a way that you can receive it best. I think that's kind of an ongoing skill. But I loved what she said about one of her favorite pillars outside the 3 C's was honesty.
Yeah, and that's back to that statement that Jessica said, speaking truth and love, which I really have come to understand and respect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am going to give you another one of my top takeaways from this interview. And this one came from Spillover. I loved that during COVID, they reimagined their business by gathering on their front porch and inviting people over for wine and music, combining the best of both of them, both of their backgrounds. And during COVID, their front porch became sort of a ministry, I would say, to their neighbors, to their friends who would pop in. And when we talked about sort of the people who came by, there's some pretty famous people that came to that front porch to
their porch. They've had some talented people, and they've had it's one of their favorite things to do, even when it's not. They have this business, reservetastings.com, and they combine. What's so cool is they design the labels for the wine. They pull the wine, they curate the wine together. Eric does that, and then they work together on a playlist. So you enjoy the wine, and while you listen to the playlist, and these concerts they do, I think 4 times a year, you get to see those concerts live and learn and enjoy the wine. So they're creating a social experience, something together, and it does bring out the best. And that's really launched during COVID. They were able to grow that business, and people were able to enjoy and experience what they have to offer as artists, as couples, and in their business. And you can tell that they're just happy. They love doing it together. You and I talk a lot about, just to digress for a minute, about activities together. And this is something, like I talk about the podcast that you and I get to do together. And this is one of my favorite things about the platform, the Kickass Couples Nation platform, is I get to do this with someone I love the most. And I'm learning, we're sharing and doing it together. Mindi and Eric have this little side business. And it doesn't have to be a business. It is an activity where it brings both of their loves together, and it fills both their love tanks when they do it. And no matter if it's business or pleasure or recreation, having those activities that you can do together with your spouse, with your partner, that bring you both joy. And it's not going to always be that way, but when you can find something that kind of fills both your tanks, that's really just a great win-win.
Well, and Eric quoted, they are now known as a couple who inspire others. And I thought that was a really powerful statement. I love that. Their wine and music went to cooking in the kitchen, and they were posting a lot of this on social media, and people who were not able to leave their homes due to COVID were really enjoying and appreciating on the way that they were connecting with the rest of the world.
And what a fun interview it was. They sent us a bottle of wine to try. We used that during the interview. And I think it was the first, hopefully not the last, interview that we got to taste and experience somebody else's business. And the wine was a lot of fun. And it was just a great time to spend with them. You haven't listened. Is there anything else you want to share? There's so much we could keep talking about. I know it's hard to limit it to just a few things each.
I want to end it on one quote. And that was, they said, find someone who brings out all of the great things we want to be. And I love that. So find someone who brings out all the great things that you want to be.
Great way to end it. Thank you. Well, if you haven't listened to the full episode, it is Eric Guerra and Mindi Abair. We encourage you to go check it out at Kickass Couples Nation or anywhere you find your podcasts. If you haven't visited Kickass Couples Nation, please check us out at kickasscouplesnation.com, or you can always go to my website and it leads you right there as well, MatthewPHoffman.com. If you want to learn more how you too can level up your number one relationship. The book is coming out a week from now when we're recording this episode, so by the time you hear this, Kickass Husband will be available at Amazon.com, Ingram Spark, or on my website. We hope you check it out. And if you like this episode or this podcast, please give us a review and share it, because we are in the business of helping imperfect couples that want to level up their number one relationship. So thanks for joining us today. And please keep remembering, guys, that happily ever after does not just happen. We'll see you next time.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.